What is going on, my fellow mere mortals? My name is John Solo, and this is Mythology Explained, the show where I break down the messed up mythos behind the most famous figures in Greco-Roman mythology. Eventually we're going to do other kinds of mythology like Norse and Egyptian, but right now I'm building a base in Greco-Roman. We're about 10 episodes deep into this series, so I figured it's about time we talk about Hera, goddess of marriage, wife of Zeus, and queen of the Olympians. And the reason I want to talk about Hera today, outside of her just being a major player in several of the myths we've talked about previously, is that she is always portrayed as this jealous, vindictive figure and rarely has her side of the story told. I mean, don't get me wrong, she's jealous and vindictive no matter what, but when you consider the circumstances of her situation and what her husband put her through on a regular basis, her actions become a little more justified. You'll see what I'm talking about soon enough. Make sure to smite that like button just like Hera would if it was one of Zeus's lovers, and honestly it might have been, and subscribe to have more mythological content delivered to your sub box on a regular basis. So like usual, let's start with the basics. Hera was often portrayed by the ancient Greeks as a matronly figure who was the patron and protector of married women. She was considered the supreme goddess of marriage, women, childbirth, and family, and was believed to give blessings to newly married couples. In ancient Greek art, she was usually shown to be a beautiful woman wearing a crown and holding a royal lotus-tipped scepter or a pomegranate, and was sometimes accompanied by a cow, lion, hawk, peacock, or cuckoo. Apparently, she had a thing for animals. Hera was also the daughter of the titans Cronus and Rhea, and got a rough start in life when she, along with 4 of her siblings, was swallowed by her father Cronus because of his fear of a prophecy that his children would someday overthrow him and take his place as ruler of the universe. Of course, his actions are what caused that prophecy to be fulfilled and resulted in Zeus spiking Cronus with an emetic and making him throw up his children. What followed was a 10-year war for the throne that ended with Zeus taking his rightful place on it and asking Hera to be his wife, but more on that relationship later. When it comes to how she was worshipped, the Greeks honored Hera as a virgin goddess. Now those familiar with Greek mythology might be saying, but John, Hera had several children with Zeus. How could she be a virgin goddess? Well, it was believed that every year Hera would bathe herself in a spring and her virginity would be renewed. If only it were that simple for the rest of us. There were many temples around ancient Greece to honor Hera, and it was at these temples that people would engage in rituals and sacrifice art pieces like sculptures and pottery bearing her image. Their hopes were that Hera would bless them with a stable marriage, successful pregnancy, and sometimes even financial support for their family. As usual, we don't know many specifics about the rituals that would take place at these temples because they were sacred and therefore kept a secret, but archaeologists have found evidence of a sexual ceremony that was meant to honor the marriage between Zeus and Hera, where participants would represent the deities. In other words, church got kinky. But speaking of the marriage between Zeus and Hera, now is probably a good time to break down how they ended up together and why exactly Hera tolerated Zeus treating her like garbage. So let's get into it. It's common knowledge that Zeus and Hera had a rocky relationship, to put it lightly, but there's an interesting story behind how they ended up together and why Hera dealt with Zeus's countless affairs the way she did. You see, Hera was actually not interested in Zeus initially, and it wasn't just because she was his sister. He thought that she was the most beautiful goddess of all of them and the perfect partner to rule by his side, but as the goddess of marriage and family, she just wasn't into the idea of being with someone who lived by the complete opposite values. They were basically yin and yang, and I mean, from a certain perspective, it would actually make sense for the two rulers of the universe to exemplify the exact opposite traits. That way, when together, they would embody the entire spectrum of values. But when you put those rulers in a romantic relationship, that is when the drama starts. Well, not one to be deterred, Zeus proposed to Hera repeatedly for over 300 years and was rejected every time, when he finally said, to Hades with it. If she doesn't want to give it up, I'm just gonna use my power and take it. Zeus would have fit in great with the Hollywood executives. Knowing that Hera had a soft spot for animals, Zeus summoned a thunderstorm, transformed himself into a cuckoo, and pretended to be a distressed little bird outside her window. Hera felt bad for the poor thing, so she let it in the house and tucked it under her breast to warm it up. Then Zeus transformed back into himself and raped her. Nothing like a good old-fashioned love story, am I right? In all seriousness, what makes this even more messed up is that Hera felt such shame for letting herself be exploited that she agreed to marry Zeus, and the relationship went exactly how she feared it would. The thing is, Zeus really did love Hera. That's why he chose her as his queen, and they had plenty of kids together. Ares, Aletheia, Hebe, Angelos, Eris, and Enyo. But none of this stopped him from having affairs with other deities and sneaking down to Earth to get freaky with the mortals. The guy just wanted to spread his almighty seed and provide Greece with great rulers and heroes. It didn't take long for Hera to get tired of being cheated on though, and who can blame her? It's a shitty thing to do to anyone, but she's the goddess of marriage. It'd be like Poseidon's wife using the ocean as her toilet. So Hera decides enough is enough and starts scheming. She drugs her husband, putting him to sleep, and with the help of Apollo, Athena, Poseidon, and in some versions a few other gods who were also sick of Zeus's ruling style, chain the thunder god to his bed. But then they started to argue over which of them was most fit to take Zeus's place, and while that bickering was going down, the sea nymph Thetis summoned Briareus, one of the 100-armed Hecatoncheires, for help. Being that Zeus set the Hecatoncheires free from their prison in Tartarus during the war with the Titans, they kind of owed him one. So Briareus unchained him, and the other gods subsequently shit their pants when they realized what they'd just done. Zeus dealt out a punishment for each, but he saved the worst for Hera, because she was the ringleader. He hung her from the sky on golden chains with anvils attached to her feet. In order to be freed, Hera swore to Zeus that she would never scheme against him again. And this oath is the reason why she always took out her anger over his affairs on his lovers and children instead of him. And being that those are some of the most famous myths that she's involved in, let's talk about them next, and then you'll see why, despite her oath, she was still one of the only beings in the universe that Zeus was afraid to make angry. So if you've seen my videos on Hercules' origins and the 12 labors of Hercules, then you're no stranger to Hera's anger issues. I mean, she gave his throne that he was entitled to at birth to someone else, cursed him with madness so he'd kill his wife and children, then made him complete 12 dangerous, nearly impossible tasks to redeem himself for their murders. Could you hear the air quotes in my voice? And this was all because he was Zeus's love child with another woman, who at the time didn't even realize she was banging Zeus because he disguised himself as her husband. And Hercules, or should I say Heracles, wasn't the only one who suffered because of Zeus's horniness. Take Leto for example, another goddess of motherhood. When Hera found out that Leto was going to have Zeus's twins, she convinced the nature spirits to prevent her from giving birth on any mainland or island, causing her serious pain when she went into labor. After a while, Poseidon couldn't help but pity poor Leto, so he showed her the floating island of Delos, which was neither mainland nor an island. It was here that Leto gave birth to Apollo, god of the sun, and Artemis, god of the moon. Or let's look at Dionysus, the god of wine, who, thanks to Hera, may have had the most traumatic birth out of anyone in the history of ever. According to some myths, Zeus impregnated either Demeter or Persephone, and in response, Hera sent her Titans to rip the unborn baby apart. They did exactly that, but fortunately Zeus managed to salvage the baby's heart and had his lover, Princess Semele, eat it, which resulted in her being impregnated with Dionysus. When Hera found out about this, she disguised herself as Semele's nurse and convinced her to demand that Zeus show himself in his true form, and when the thunder god obliged, his thunder and lightning killed her. Then Zeus took the half-baked baby fetus out of his lover's corpse and sewed it into his own thigh for the rest of his gestation. Like, it's no wonder that Dionysus is the god of wine. If I'd gone through that much trauma just to be born, you know I'd be chugging all day, every day, just to cope. And the last of Zeus's lovers I want to talk about is Lamia, the queen of Libya, who had her entire life ripped away from her by Hera. Depending on the version you read, when the goddess found out her husband was in love with Lamia, she turned the queen into a monster, causing her to eat her own children. It either went down that way, or Hera killed Lamia's children herself, and the queen's rage is what turned her into a monster. Either way, Lamia continued to live in this monstrous form, and would go on to eat the children of mothers that she was jealous of. But it's not over yet, folks. For extra punishment, Hera cursed Lamia with the inability to close her eyes so that she would always obsess over the image of her dead children. Sadly, no god can simply reverse another god's magic, not even Zeus, so to help Lamia, he gave her the ability to remove her eyes when she wanted to rest. You know your situation sucks when the only way you can rest is by pulling out your eyeballs. Now, as hard as Hera goes in these myths, it's not like she was the only one who got jealous. There's one instance where Zeus brutally punishes and humiliates an individual named Ixion when the god found out that he was lusting after Hera. They weren't even hooking up. Zeus just knew Ixion was planning on macking on her, so he orchestrated a punishment that he saw fit. He tricked Ixion into banging a cloud that he created to look like Hera, then strapped him onto a wheel of fire that is still spinning to this day. Oh, and fun fact, Ixion managed to get that cloud pregnant, and she gave birth to the first ever centaur. So, That's how centaurs came into existence. Anyway, on that weird note, I'm gonna end today's show. I know there's a few more myths involving Hera that we could have talked about, and I'm no doubt gonna see some comments saying,
"Wow, you made a video about Hera and didn't even mention that she gave birth to the Typhon, or her role in the Battle of Troy, or how she walked around Olympus for an entire day with her robe tucked into her underwear and didn't even realize it."
But honestly, I think those stories are epic enough to get their own video, kinda like how I did the 12 Labors of Hercules. Also, I'm human. There's only so much information I can jam into a video before my head literally explodes. Yeah, literally. But that doesn't mean that you're done here. I really want to hear your thoughts on Hera after hearing how she was pressured into a marriage with Zeus and basically forced to swear that she would never hold him accountable for his actions. Do you have more pity for her than you did before? Do you still think she's a jealous, vindictive monster for her relentless persecution of Zeus's lovers and children? Let me know in the comments below. And when you're through with that, make sure you drop a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and share this video with your fellow mythology nerds. Also, I'd love it if you followed my lame ass on social media. I admittedly don't have the best posts out there, but I share some top-tier memes, and I use those pages to interact with you and keep you updated on what's happening with the channel. So, in my opinion, it's worth following me on at least one of them. And don't forget to follow Gunther too, just because he deserves it. Even more than I do. As always, thank you for watching, my fellow mere mortals. Until next time, my name is John Solo, and remember, John shot first.